What's going on, Summoners? Welcome back to another episode of Underrated Picks. My name is Dan, and in this video, I'm going to run you guys through some heavily underrated and mostly uncontested picks that you need to start playing in your solo queue games. Our analysts sift through a ton of data to find these picks because they want you guys to have the best chance at climbing as possible. If you hate the fact that the meta picks are always picked or banned and want to be that chaotic force that rips through Summoner's Rift, look no further because you found just the video for you. By the way, guys, if you want to get better this season, I suggest you check out ProGuides.com. We've got a ton of coaches who are there and ready to help you improve your gameplay, and a bunch of courses as well as live classes by a variety of top players. And finally, for our question of the day, I want to know if you guys sell boots to get a 6th item. In other words, once you've completed your build and end up with enough to buy a 7th completed item, are you willing to trade your boots for them? I know games aren't going as long as previous seasons, but in those rare occasions that they do, what do you choose to do? Personally, it depends on who I'm playing. I think the only champions I'm willing to sell boots on are tanks, as I value mobility a lot. I feel like all those bonus stats don't amount to much when you can't catch your opponents or inevitably get caught out. But let me know your answers in the comments below. With that said, let's hop into the video. Kicking off the top lane, let's talk about Kled. While Kled was previously a pick we repeatedly hyped up as an OP meta pick, he's slowly fallen out of the meta. The biggest reason for this is that he's pretty hit or miss when it comes to fighting the meta champions. Some are favorable, while others feel like unwinnable uphill battles. However, as long as you exercise good decision making and also choose the right games to play him, Kled is still one of the best picks in the game because of his playmaking potential and high solo kill potential. Grievous Wounds is great, and Kled gets it for free with his Q. Missing a lot of Qs? Well, just run Summoner Ignite and we can always pretend that you hit it. Kled's ultimate is invaluable as it allows you to apply pressure on the other lanes anytime you're off the map. Even if you recall to purchase items or in response to getting pushed out of lane, suddenly the rest of the map is open for potential roams or dives. He's been on the back burner and his popularity has slowly been dwindling. If anything, now is a pretty good time to start playing Kled because you'll be able to get him without much contest. Our next top lane pick is Quinn, for similar reasons too. Quinn is also able to apply a ton of pressure on the enemy team because of her unforgiving roams. Once she hits 6, Quinn travels through the map very quickly, and I'm sure most of us that have played against her recently are all too aware of the leave lane and never come back strategy that a ton of Quinn players utilize. While it might not always be the most optimal strategy, the thing is that it works. People hate it when they lose lane because someone from across the map randomly decided to gank them. A lot of players also hate playing against ranged champs up top. A ranged champion is one that a lot of us need to have ready as a pocket pick regardless. Quinn is a great answer to the meta and is also a great champion for carrying solo queue games in general. Also, Quinn is one of the few champions that likes to build Sanguine Blade. She rides solo quite often, and this item is packed with a ton of stats. It actually has insane value as a standalone item, especially in the late game. Even if Quinn might fall off in the late game, she remains a relevant split-pushing threat because of how quickly she takes down turrets, and also because of how quickly she can rotate and join a fight if her team needs her. That's going to cover our top lane picks, so make sure to take a final look at the screen where we put up all those builds for you guys. Next is the jungle. It's time, boys! Skarner is back! Well, sort of. Players are still working out the kinks and optimizing him, but there's no better time than now to pick him up because he recently received some buffs to help him out. Skarner's ultimate is an extremely powerful pick-making tool, and the counterplay to it is to spend 1,300 gold on an item that most champions don't want. In the current state of the game, it absolutely feels like a single player's mistake decides victory or defeat. This is where Skarner shines. He doesn't just punish mistakes, he claws his way to victory off of them. Give him an inch and he'll take a mile, honestly. Suppression is one of the strongest forms of crowd control in the game, but Skarner takes it a step further because he can pull his target towards his team, further spelling out their imminent doom. One of the trickier parts of playing Skarner is making sure you're fighting on his turf. In other words, making sure that you're able to take control of his spires. They provide an incredible amount of bonus movement speed and attack speed, and Skarner is easily underestimated as a result. For reference, he gains 43% attack speed at level 1 and 160% at level 18. Regardless of whether it's early or late game, Skarner isn't someone you can take lightly when he's fighting on his territory. Skarner's E received a massive quality of life buff this patch as it no longer slows down after hitting a target. The ability is much more reliable, and Skarner feels like a crowd control machine now. Next up in the jungle is Zac. While his popularity is subjective, there's an easy argument to be made over the fact that he is quite underrated. In high elo, Zac finds a decent amount of success as his win rate is positive even against players that should theoretically understand how to play against him. Avoid his ganks, play aggressive jungler that can bully him out, you get the picture. Guess it's not enough because someone on my team manages to die to a random Zac gank every time I see him. In low elo, Zac is a powerhouse as he holds significantly higher win rates. I'm talking about win rates near 54%, guys. He's ridiculously strong under the right circumstances. Like we mentioned in our top lane section, ganks are an extremely effective way to carry games, and a lot of this has to do with tilt. Zac is a ganking cannonball machine, and I know from experience that he can feel really tilting to play against. Once he pitches his tent in your lane, you're not going to have a good time. Most players aren't willing to make the sacrifices they need in order to prevent Zac players from successfully affecting their lanes, and we highly suggest you take advantage of him. He's not nearly as popular as before, and his ban rates are actually quite low at the moment. That concludes the jungle builds, so we're putting them up for you guys one more time. Alright, if you're done looking at those, let's head over to the mid lane next. I mean, come on, it's definitely a bit obvious, but Swain is so underrated right now. He received a bunch of changes, which should have encouraged players to start playing him more, but honestly, not that many have taken the leap of faith. At the moment, Swain holds a 53% win rate in the mid lane across all ranks, which is pretty darn good. High elo players back up his power as he's pushed his win rate to just below 52%, though admittedly the sample size of games is rather low, so this is volatile information. What isn't is, like we mentioned, his overall win rate, meaning that at worst, he's a mid to low elo king. If you're caught anywhere between Iron and Platinum, you don't need to second guess yourself if you're questioning if you should play Swain or not. He's definitely in a spot where it won't hurt to at least give him a try. Swain is a tanky battle mage that acts as both a frontliner and carry. His ultimate allows him to soak up a ton of damage, and enemies that are too eager to pick a fight might find themselves facing a gray screen a lot more than they'd like to. Swain's biggest weakness is his short range, but range differences don't have as much impact in low elo. Instead, what makes Swain a strong pick is his high damage, crowd control, tankiness, and easy follow-up game with his passive. These are all things you want on a champion if you're looking to find success amidst average level or casual players. At the same time, his weaknesses are ones you can learn to play around if your goals are to continue climbing and play against the best. Use Fog of War or force objectives to make your opponents come to you. That'll save you the struggle of trying to chase down enemies that easily outrange you. You've probably seen clips of Faker playing Nunu mid somewhere on the internet. Nunu mid is our next underrated pick in the mid lane. Nobody, and I mean nobody, saw this guy coming. He's pumping out some crazy numbers, and his gameplay is actually very similar to a champion that no one really cares about anymore, Aurelion Sol. Not to bash on Aurelion Sol players, but Nunu actually has more games played in the mid lane this patch, and that's saying something. Maybe we'll talk about the dragon in another episode, but Nunu is slowly on the rise. By the way, guys, these sorts of niche picks can definitely feel tricky to play. So if you want some help, I heavily suggest checking out ProGuides.com and contacting a coach who can help you learn them. While his play rate is low, Nunu mid is a wild card that a lot of players don't expect, especially considering that he's mainly played as a jungle. What makes Nunu a potent mid laner is his high sustain, wave clear with snowball, and of course, his roams. Just like Aurelion Sol, playing Nunu mid revolves around attaining mid priority and applying pressure on side lanes. With the buffs to Nunu's ultimate especially, his turret dives are absolutely devastating. Building AP increases the amount of shielding he receives when ulting, meaning that he actually gets a bit tankier if he builds damage. Medjai's Soul Stealer is an item you definitely want to pick up on him if you're finding successful ganks. The point of playing Nunu mid is to gank other lanes, so you might as well get some free AP and potentially extra movement speed out of it. That covers the mid lane, so next up, let's talk about the bottom lane. First up for bot laners is Senna. While she's seeing a great deal of play as a support, her popularity as a marksman has dwindled quite a bit. However, what if we told you that her win rate as a bot laner was actually higher than her win rate as a support? Would you act on that information? Senna received a buff back in patch 10.12 that increased the drop rate of souls on minions that Senna killed. The buff was a pretty big one as it increased the drop rate from 1.67% to 8.333%. In other words, the passive drop rate more than quadrupled after a single patch, and it's surprising that not many people are talking about it. An item that players have been building more is Rapid Fire Cannon. Senna already has an extremely high attack range, but she can take it to the next level with this item and basically hit enemies from a screen away whenever she's energized. There are tons of different builds going around with her, but the majority of them still focus on building a Manamune as a core item and stemming off from there. Senna's range is oppressive, and the fact that the drop rate on souls is so high now means that inevitably she's going to become a pretty big problem come the late game. Next for the bottom lane is Veigar. Veigar is one of the least commonly played bot laners because he's usually a mid laner. However, Veigar's utility and infinite scaling merit him as a potential pick in any team that needs a carry. While Veigar's early game is rather weak, what makes him a difficult lane opponent is his cage. It's always a jungle difference after all, right? Veigar's stun is a nasty trap that makes it so easy for junglers to gank. Even if he doesn't land the stun, Veigar confines his enemies to a certain space by casting his cage around them. Whether it results in kills or summoner spells, it's easy for Veigar to apply pressure given the right resources. With or without help, Veigar can farm up with his Q to gradually build his AP, and at level 6, he can look for some quick traits to get damage out and then try to burst down his opponents with a full rotation of spells. In cases where games stall out for too long, he'll break the 1000 AP mark and he'll be able to delete practically any opponent. By building a Hextech GLP and Twin Shadows on Veigar, you basically upgrade your cage. It becomes easier to land, and the extra slows limit enemy movement even more. That covers the bottom lane picks, so take one last look at those builds on the screen because we're going to wrap it all up with supports. First off for supports is Soraka. While Soraka stands among the strongest supports in the game, she doesn't see nearly as much play as the rest of her peers. Her playstyle is typically viewed as passive or boring, contributing to her lower play rate. However, her playstyle isn't inherently bad or weak by any means. It's just a different type of game you'll be playing, and you're also going to have to rely a bit more on your team. Inevitably, every support will have to take some risks because the same issues can arise with lane partners or teammates, regardless of what kind of support you play. Soraka's strength lies in her abilities to keep her allies alive and save them from what would otherwise be certain death. Karthus also has come back into the meta, so she's a great soft counter to him as she's able to basically even the playing field with her own ultimate. Soraka's laning isn't bad by any means either. Her Q is pretty annoying to play against as it deals a decent chunk of damage and also provides Soraka with an insane amount of sustain. Our final pick for the video is Taric. While League's most fabulous champion has had his ups and downs, he remained an underrated pick for quite a while now. Some players have been taking a more aggressive approach with him, running Aftershock in place of Guardian. Our analysts have very little information in regards to this specific build, but the data indicates that it's definitely at least a viable niche choice. Off this notion, the thing about Taric is that it's not always just about protecting your allies. Not many people play Taric, so they're not aware that he slaps pretty hard with his hammer. Taric's passive makes him an extremely powerful duelist in the early game and a great support at all stages since he can cast consecutive heals because of it. What most players do know about is Taric's ultimate, which of course contributes heavily to the fact that Taric is indeed a solid pick at the moment. As assassins become more and more popular, Taric will definitely become a much more sought after pick, so don't sleep on him. That's it for those supports, so take one final look at the screen for the final builds recap of this video. Alright, and that concludes this episode of Underrated Picks. Thank you guys so much for watching, and we appreciate all the support that you guys continue to provide us. Make sure to subscribe and to stay updated with more informational content just like this, and I hope to see all of you guys in our next video. Best of luck on Summoner's Rift, guys.